In the soft light of dawn, I, Elena, often find myself reflecting on the life I built. Nestled in a quaint town, our home is a tapestry of countless memories, each thread a testament to the life Marco and I have woven together over 15 years. Our children, now teetering on the cusp of adolescence, fill our days with a vibrant, albeit hectic, rhythm. Marco, ever the stoic and diligent partner, has been the unwavering pillar of our family. His dedication to both our family and his construction business never ceases to amaze me. Yet, beneath his steadfast exterior, I often wonder about the untold stories and unshared burdens he carries. Our life, marked by routine and comfort, is seemingly idyllic. Community gatherings, school events, and the ebb and flow of small-town life frame our existence. But in these moments of tranquility, a part of me yearns for something undefined, a missing piece in the puzzle of my contentment. As I stand in our kitchen, sipping my morning coffee, the day ahead unfolds like any other. Little do I know, the arrival of new neighbors is about to ripple through the calm waters of my life, challenging the very foundations of my world. The arrival of spring brought more than just blooming flowers and warmer days to our little town. It also heralded the arrival of the Dawson family, moving into the long vacant house down the street. Alex Dawson, with his charismatic demeanor and quick smile, instantly became a topic of interest in our close-knit community. His wife, Sarah, was equally charming, and their 3 children blended seamlessly into the fabric of neighborhood life. At the local community center, where I often volunteered, I first met Alex. His approachable manner and effortless conversation made our initial interactions pleasant, if somewhat unremarkable. However, as fate would have it, our paths crossed more frequently. School events, neighborhood gatherings, and chance meetings at the grocery store soon became common. I noticed a change in myself during these encounters. A flutter of excitement, a quickening of my heart, whenever Alex was near. It was perplexing, this newfound awareness of someone who was, after all, just a neighbor. I chided myself for these foolish thoughts, reminding myself of the life and family I cherished. Marco, ever absorbed in his work, seemed oblivious to these subtle shifts. Our evenings were often spent in comfortable silence, with him recounting the day's challenges at work and me sharing tidbits of neighborhood news. I never mentioned Alex, fearing that even the slightest acknowledgement would breathe life into these unwarranted feelings. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself looking forward to community events more than I ever had. The realization that Alex would be there, with his easy laugh and engaging stories, brought a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. During a neighborhood barbecue, Alex and I found ourselves alone for the first time. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on everything from trivial daily occurrences to deeper, more personal topics. It was then that I realized the danger of this growing connection. There was an undeniable chemistry between us, a connection that transcended mere friendship. That night, as I lay in bed next to Marco, I couldn't shake the image of Alex's smile, the sound of his laughter. A sense of guilt washed over me, yet it was intertwined with an excitement I couldn't deny. I knew then that my life, once so predictable, was veering towards a path I had never expected to tread. The days following the barbecue felt like a whirlwind of emotions. My mind replayed every interaction with Alex, each word, each smile. It was unsettling, this attraction to a man who was not my husband. Marco and I had built a life together, one filled with love, respect, and shared memories. Yet, here I was, drawn to another. I confided in my best friend, Julia, who listened with a mix of concern and intrigue. "It's just a crush, Elena. It happens," she said, trying to soothe my troubled conscience. But her words provided little comfort. This felt more intense than a mere crush, it was as if Alex had awakened a part of me I didn't know existed. At work, my thoughts often drifted, leaving me staring blankly at papers on my desk. My students' voices seemed distant as I grappled with my internal conflict. I knew it was wrong, this burgeoning feeling for Alex. I had to quell it, for the sake of my family, for my own peace of mind. Yet, as much as I tried to suppress these emotions, they only grew stronger. each meeting with Alex, whether planned or accidental, fanned the flames. His presence was like a magnet, pulling me in despite my resistance. One evening, while Marco was away on a business trip, Alex and I found ourselves alone at a community event. Our conversation meandered through various topics, eventually landing on our personal lives. He shared his struggles with moving to a new place, the challenges of adapting to a different community. I listened, empathizing, and before I knew it, I was sharing my own feelings of restlessness, my yearning for something more. It was then that I realized the dangerous territory we were treading. The air between us was charged with an unspoken acknowledgement of our mutual attraction. I excused myself, claiming an early morning at work, and left in a hurry. That night, alone in my bed, I wrestled with guilt and confusion. I loved Marco, I loved our life together, but this connection with Alex was undeniable. It was a forbidden allure, one that threatened to shatter the very foundation of my existence. As I lay there, a single tear escaped, tracing a path down my cheek. It was a tear for the life I knew, for the innocence lost, and for the uncertainty of what lay ahead. In the quiet of our bedroom, with Elena asleep beside me, the weight of my thoughts often keeps me awake. My construction business, once a source of pride, now teeters on the brink of collapse. The stress of unpaid bills and looming debts is a constant companion, gnawing at me day and night. I've kept these troubles from Elena, not wanting to burden her with my failures. She has always seen me as her rock, her steady hand in the chaos of life. Admitting my vulnerabilities, my fears, would shatter that image, an image I've worked hard to maintain. Lately, I've noticed a change in Elena. She seems distant, lost in thought, her laughter not as frequent. I've attributed it to the mundane stresses of life, her job, the kids. But deep down, a nagging suspicion tells me it's more than that. I push these thoughts away, fearing what they might reveal. The truth is, I've been so wrapped up in my own struggles that I've failed to see the growing chasm between us. Our conversations have become superficial, our interactions routine. The passionate love that once defined us now feels like a distant memory. I remember the early days of our relationship, the effortless connection, the shared dreams. We were a team, facing the world together. But now, it feels like we're drifting apart, each lost in our own battles. One evening, as I sat poring over bills and financial statements, Elena came to me with a concern in her voice. "Is everything okay, Marco? You've been so distant lately." Her question caught me off guard. How do I tell her that the life we've built is on the verge of crumbling? I muster a smile, the same smile I've used to mask my worries. "Everything's fine, just tired from work," I reply, hoping to ease her concern. She doesn't press further, but I can see the doubt in her eyes. It's a painful reminder of the growing gap between us, a gap I'm unsure how to bridge. As I watch her walk away, a sense of helplessness washes over me. I'm torn between wanting to protect her from my struggles and the desperate need to share my burden. But pride, fear, and the desire to uphold the facade of a strong, dependable husband keep me silent. In the solitude of our room, I lie awake, wondering how much longer I can keep this up. The fear of losing everything, my business, my family, my sense of self, looms over me like a dark cloud. And in the silence of the night, I feel more alone than ever. The neighborhood fundraiser was an event I had always looked forward to. It was a night of community spirit, laughter, and camaraderie. But this year, it felt different. There was an undercurrent of anticipation within me, a knowing that Alex would be there. The evening started off as usual, with neighbors greeting each other, sharing stories, and enjoying the festivities. Marco was unable to attend, caught up in a last-minute business crisis. I was there alone, trying to mingle, but my thoughts kept drifting to Alex. As the night progressed, I found myself in a quiet corner of the room, away from the crowd. That's when Alex approached me. "Elena, you look like you could use some company," he said, his voice warm and inviting. We talked, our conversation flowing more freely than ever. With each word, each shared laugh, the connection between us deepened. I knew I was treading dangerous waters, but the thrill of it, the sheer intensity of our connection, was intoxicating. It was then that he touched my hand, a simple gesture that sent a jolt of electricity through me. Our eyes met, and in that moment, we both knew. The unspoken desire, the undeniable attraction, it was all there, laid bare between us. I should have walked away, put an end to it right then and there. But I didn't. Instead, I allowed myself to be swept up in the moment, in the rush of emotions that Alex stirred within me. We excused ourselves from the event, finding ourselves alone in the moonlit garden. The air was thick with tension, our hearts racing. And then, it happened. A kiss, a forbidden embrace, a moment of weakness that would alter the course of our lives. The guilt hit me immediately. What had I done? I had betrayed Marco, my family, everything I held dear. I pulled away from Alex, my mind racing with the consequences of our actions. I can't do this, I whispered, the reality of a situation crashing down on me. Alex nodded, the regret evident in his eyes. We both knew this was a line that should never have been crossed. I hurried home, the weight of my guilt a heavy cloak around me. Marco was still out, and the house was quiet. In the darkness of our bedroom, I lay awake, tormented by my actions. The kiss with Alex was a mistake, a moment of folly, but it was also a wake-up call. It revealed the depth of my unhappiness, the longing for something more. But at what cost? The realization that I had jeopardized everything I cared for filled me with dread. As the night stretched on, the image of Marco's trusting face haunted me. I knew then that my life could never be the same again. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I had crossed a boundary from which there was no easy return. In the days following the fundraiser, the memory of that stolen kiss lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of my betrayal. I avoided Alex, hoping distance would quell the flames of this forbidden attraction. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Our small town, with its intertwined lives, made avoidance nearly impossible. Alex and I found ourselves thrown together time and again. At school events, community gatherings, even the local grocery store, our paths crossed, each encounter reigniting the spark between us. Despite my guilt, despite my love for Marco, I couldn't deny the magnetic pull I felt towards Alex. He too struggled with the intensity of our connection. We tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the tension between us was palpable. One afternoon, Alex stopped by my house under the guise of discussing a school fundraiser. We were alone, the kids at school, Marco at work. The conversation quickly veered away from community events to us, to the undeniable truth of our feelings. It's not just attraction, Elena, Alex confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't stop thinking about you. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. His words echoed my own inner turmoil. The barriers I had tried to erect crumbled under the weight of my own desires. In a moment of weakness, we gave in to our emotions, crossing a line from which there was no turning back. Our affair began in earnest, a whirlwind of secret meetings and stolen moments. We were cautious, aware of the potential fallout should our relationship be discovered. But with each clandestine encounter, the risk seemed less significant compared to the intensity of what we shared. The affair was a bittersweet mix of exhilaration and guilt. With Alex, I felt alive, awakened to a passion I hadn't known I was capable of. But the moments of joy were interspersed with pangs of guilt and fear. The image of Marco, trusting and unaware, haunted me. I knew what we were doing was wrong, that we were risking everything for this illicit love. But the pull was too strong, the connection too deep to simply walk away from. As the weeks turned into months, our affair continued, growing more intense with each passing day. We communicated through secret messages, planned meetings with meticulous care. The thrill of the forbidden added to the intensity of our relationship. But with the thrill came the ever-present shadow of fear. Fear of discovery, fear of the consequences, fear of hurting those we love. It was a precarious balance, one that could topple at any moment. And as I lay in bed each night, next to a man I still loved but was betraying, I couldn't help but wonder how long we could keep this secret. How long before the truth came out and shattered the fragile world we had built. Each morning, as I woke up beside Marco, I felt like an imposter in my own life. The weight of my secret affair with Alex lay heavy on my heart, casting a shadow over the mundane routines of my daily existence. I played the role of a loving wife and mother, all the while harboring a secret that threatened to tear my world apart. The guilt was a constant companion, gnawing at me during quiet moments, whispering accusations in the dead of night. I looked at Marco, his face etched with the worries of his struggling business, and felt a pang of betrayal. He was fighting his own battles, unaware of the storm brewing in our marriage. My children, too, became unwitting actors in this charade. They went about their days, innocent and oblivious to the turmoil within their mother. I watched them laugh and play, and my heart ached with the knowledge that my actions could cause them unimaginable pain. With Alex, I was a different person, passionate, alive, and reckless. Our stolen moments were filled with a fervor that I had never experienced before. But the aftermath of each encounter left me feeling hollow, a shell of the woman I once was. The affair was like a drug, intoxicating and addictive, but also destructive. I found myself caught in a web of lies, each one leading me further away from the person I used to be. The Elena who valued honesty and integrity seemed like a distant memory, replaced by someone I barely recognize. I began to resent myself, loathing the choices I had made, the deception I was living. There were moments when I resolved to end the affair, to come clean to Marco and try to salvage the remnants of our marriage. But each time I saw Alex, my resolve crumbled, and I was pulled back into the tempest of our illicit relationship. The dual life I was leading took its toll. I became distant, distracted, my mind always elsewhere. Marco noticed the change, his concerned glances and probing questions becoming more frequent. I deflected and lied, hating myself more with each falsehood. As the affair continued, the moments of happiness with Alex became overshadowed by the fear of discovery. The risk of our secret being exposed loomed large, threatening to destroy everything I held dear. One evening, as I lay in bed, the reality of my situation hit me with full force. I was living a lie, hurting the people I love, risking my family, my marriage, my very sense of self. The affair, once a source of exhilaration, had become a prison of my own making. Tears streamed down my face as the magnitude of my betrayals sunk in. I had ventured down a path that had no easy return, and the cost of my actions was becoming too great to bear. The guilt, once a dull ache, was now a piercing pain, a reminder of the woman I had become. As dawn broke, I knew something had to change. I could no longer live this lie, torn between two worlds. But the thought of facing the consequences of my actions filled me with dread. How could I possibly repair the damage I had caused? How could I face Marco, my children, and myself with the truth of what I had done? In the stillness of the morning, I realized the hardest decisions lay ahead. I had to find the courage to confront my mistakes and face the uncertain future that awaited me. The day my world came crashing down started like any other. I went about my morning routine, all the while carrying the heavy burden of my secret. Little did I know that by the end of the day, everything would change. It was a simple mistake, a forgotten phone left on the kitchen table, that spelled the end of my carefully constructed facade. Marco found it, saw the messages from Alex, the undeniable evidence of our affair. The look on his face when I walked into the room and saw him holding my phone is etched into my memory forever, a mix of disbelief, hurt, and betrayal. His voice, when he finally spoke, was filled with a pain that cut through me. "Elena, how could you?" The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I stood there, frozen, unable to form the words that could explain the inexplicable. The confrontation that followed was a blur of tears, anger, and heart-wrenching confessions. I tried to explain, to apologize, but words seemed meaningless in the face of such betrayal. Marco's anger was palpable, his sense of betrayal deep. He spoke of trust, of love, of the life we had built together, all now tainted by my deception. As Marco's words poured out, the reality of what I had done hit me with full force. The pain in his eyes was a reflection of the pain I had caused. Our children, hearing the commotion, came into the room, their confused faces adding to the agony of the moment. In the days that followed, our home became a battleground of emotions. Marco, grappling with the betrayal, withdrew into himself, his pain turning to a cold distance that was even harder to bear. I tried to reach out, to repair the damage, but the chasm between us seemed insurmountable. The news of our affair spread through the community like wildfire, fueled by gossip and judgment. Friends and neighbors looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. I had become the subject of whispered conversations, the protagonist of a scandal that rocked our small town. Alex, caught in the storm of our exposed affair, faced his own turmoil. His wife, Sarah, devastated by the betrayal, struggled with the decision to stay or leave. The Dawson family, once a vibrant part of our community, became shrouded in the shadows of our indiscretion. The consequences of our actions were far-reaching and devastating. My relationship with Alex, once a source of passion and escape, had become a symbol of my greatest failure. The affair had not only destroyed my marriage, but had also fractured the lives of those around us. As I faced the aftermath of the exposed affair, the full weight of my choices bore down on me. I had risked everything for a fleeting moment of happiness, and now I was left to face the consequences. The future, once certain and secure, was now uncertain and fraught with pain. In the wake of the revelation, I struggled to come to terms with the new reality. The once happy home Marco and I had built was now filled with a heavy silence, a constant reminder of the trust one had broken. The unraveling of my life was a harsh lesson in the consequences of our choices, a reminder that some mistakes cannot be undone. As I grappled with the fallout, I knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with regret and the daunting task of rebuilding what had been shattered. The days following the revelation of my affair were the longest and darkest of my life. The house, once filled with the sounds of a happy family, was now eerily silent, each of us isolated in our own worlds of hurt and confusion. Marco, the man I had loved and shared my life with for so many years, became a stranger. The warmth in his eyes had been replaced by a cold, distant look that I couldn't penetrate. He moved through the days like a ghost, his presence a constant reminder of the pain I had caused. Our children, caught in the middle of this storm, were confused and hurt. They didn't understand the details, but they could feel the tension, the shift in the atmosphere at home. I tried to reassure them, to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the facade was difficult to uphold. I saw their hurt, their disappointment, and it broke my heart. The betrayal had not only shattered my marriage, but also the trust of my children. They looked at me differently now, their innocent eyes filled with questions I couldn't answer. I had always been their protector, their guide, but now I had become the source of their pain. As the days turned into weeks, Marco and I barely spoke. When we did, our conversations were strained, filled with the unspoken words and emotions that lay between us. The house felt like a battleground, each of us tiptoeing around the minefield of our shattered relationship. The decision to separate came from Marco. "I need space, Elena. I can't be around you right now," he said, his voice void of the warmth it once held. The words were a dagger to my heart, but I knew he was right. We needed distance, time to process the hurt and betrayal. Moving out of our family home was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Packing up my belongings, I felt like I was dismantling my life, piece by piece. Each item, each memory, was a reminder of what I had lost, what I had destroyed. Staying with Julia, I found little comfort in the escape from the tension at home. The guilt and shame followed me, a constant shadow that I couldn't shake off. Julia tried to support me, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. I had let down everyone I loved, and there was no escaping that reality. As I lay in the guest room at Julia's house, the loneliness was overwhelming. The life I had known, the family I had cherished, was slipping away from me. The consequences of my actions were more far-reaching and devastating than I could have ever imagined. The affair with Alex, once a secret escape, now felt like a distant, painful memory. He too was dealing with the fallout, his own family in turmoil. Our paths rarely crossed now, and when they did, there was an unspoken understanding of the damage we had caused. In the quiet of the night, I found myself reflecting on the choices I had made. How had I let things go so far? How had I been so blind to the consequences? The answers eluded me, lost in a sea of regret and sorrow. The broken bonds of my family were a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the price of betrayal. As I faced each day, I knew that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, with the daunting task of finding forgiveness and rebuilding the trust one had shattered. The fallout of my affair extended far beyond the walls of my home. In our small town, news travels fast, and soon everyone knew of my indiscretion. The community I once considered myself a part of began to view me through a lens of judgment and disdain. Walking down the streets, I could feel the eyes of neighbors on me, their whispers like invisible darts. The warm greetings I once received were replaced by cold shoulders and averted gazes. Friends I had known for years suddenly found excuses to avoid me, and I became a pariah in the very place I had called home for so long. At the grocery store, I overheard hushed conversations, snippets of my own story being recounted with added embellishments. The shame was suffocating, making even the simplest of errands feel like an ordeal. Even at work, the atmosphere had changed. Colleagues who used to chat with me now kept their distance, their interactions polite but distant. My role as a teacher, once a source of pride and joy, now felt tainted. I wondered if the parents of my students talked about me, if they questioned my integrity as an educator. My affair with Alex had not only broken my family but had also shattered my social identity. The trust and respect I had taken years to build were gone in an instant, replaced by a reputation I never imagined I would have. The isolation was palpable. I had always believed our community to be supportive and understanding, but now I found myself on the outside looking in, grappling with the harsh reality of my actions. Every encounter in town was a reminder of what I had lost, of the person I had become. I longed to explain, to apologize, but I knew no words could undo the damage I had caused. The Elena who had been a valued member of the community was no more, replaced by someone I hardly recognized. In my solitude, I reflected on the irony of it all. In seeking something that I thought was missing in my life, I had lost so much more. The respect of my peers, the warmth of friendships, the sense of belonging, all were casualties of my choices. As days turned into weeks, I found myself withdrawing further, venturing out only when necessary. The judgment I faced in the community was a constant reminder of the mistake I had made, a mistake that had cost me not just my family, but my place in the world I had known. As the weeks turned into months, the reality of my new existence settled in with a crushing weight. The decision to divorce was mutual, yet the process was anything but easy. Legal proceedings, discussions about custody, and the division of assets were not just transactions, they were the disassembly of a life we had built together. In court, sitting across from Marco, I saw a man I still loved but from whom I had grown so distant. Our interactions were cold, functional, and tinged with sadness. I could see the hurt I had caused him, and it pained me deeply. The divorce was more than just a legal end to our marriage, it was a stark symbol of my failure as a partner. The impact on our children was the hardest to bear. They were torn between two worlds, trying to understand the complexities of adult relationships that even I couldn't grasp. I tried to be there for them, to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but our interactions were strained, overshadowed by the unspoken truth of my actions. Professionally, the consequences of my affair had rippled through my career. My reputation as a dedicated and moral educator was tarnished, and though the school board didn't take formal action, the whispers and judgment from colleagues and parents were punishment enough. I felt like an outcast, a pariah in a profession built on trust and respect. Alex, too, faced his own set of challenges. His marriage had ended, his wife unable to forgive the betrayal. The once close-knit family was now divided, their children struggling to cope with fallout. Our affair had not only destroyed our own families but had caused irreparable damage to theirs as well. In the aftermath, Alex and I barely spoke. The passion that had once drawn us together was now replaced by a shared sense of guilt and regret. The affair had lost its allure, its reality far too painful to sustain any remnants of what we had. The finalization of the divorce was a solemn affair, a quiet end to a stormy chapter. I found myself alone, truly alone for the first time in years. The house we had shared was now Marcos, the kids splitting their time between us. I moved into a small apartment, a stark contrast to the life I once knew. In the solitude of my new home, I grappled with the consequences of my choices. The silence was deafening, a constant reminder of the void left by my shattered family. I missed the laughter, the chaos, the warmth. But most of all, I missed the sense of belonging, of being part of something greater than myself. As I tried to rebuild my life, I found little comfort in the freedom I had once craved. The affair, which had seemed like an escape from my mundane existence, had cost me everything. The love of my husband, the trust of my children, the respect of my community, all were casualties of a choice that I could never take back. In the quiet moments, I often wondered about the path not taken, the life I could have had if I had made different choices. The pain of regret was a constant companion, a reminder of the love I had lost and the harm I had caused. As the days passed, I realized that the journey ahead was not just about rebuilding my life, but about finding redemption. I had to learn to live with the choices I had made, to find a way to forgive myself and to seek forgiveness from those I had hurt. The story of my affair and its aftermath was a painful lesson in the consequences of our actions. It was a reminder that the decisions we make, in moments of weakness or desire, can have far-reaching effects on the lives of those we love. In the end, the journey towards healing and redemption was a long and difficult one. It was a path marked by introspection, by a deep understanding of the pain I had caused, and by a resolve to become a better person. The road was not easy, but it was necessary, a journey towards forgiveness, growth, and, ultimately, towards finding peace within. The steam from my coffee blurred the world outside the cafe window into a watercolor mess, my mind as scattered as the pedestrians rushing by. Then, like a jolt from the blue, there he was, Marcos, a blast from my past, weaving through the crowd, unmistakable. Jenna, his voice, richer but just as warm, pulled me back to reality. The chance encounter was a spark in my mundane routine, reigniting old college memories. We exchanged numbers, the digits feeling like a secret pact. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcos. "It was great seeing you today. Let's catch up soon." What harm could there be in texting back? The conversation flowed effortlessly, as if the years hadn't put any distance between us. We talked for hours, the digital clock on my phone marking the passage of time like a silent witness to our rekindled connection. The next week, under the guise of a work lunch, we met. Laughter and stories filled the space between us, erasing the years. It was as if we'd never parted, our connection immediate and intense. I hadn't laughed that freely in years, not since. I pushed the thought away. Lying to Aaron came easier than I expected. "A late meeting," I said, avoiding his eyes. Guilt gnawed at me, but the thrill of secrecy was intoxicating. Our secret lunches became our little escape until one day, as we lingered over coffee, Marcos's hand found mine. The touch was electric, a shockwave through my system, culminating in a kiss that sealed our fates. I should have pulled away. Instead, I found myself leaning in, lost in the moment. The walk home was a battle with my conscience. Guilt clashed with exhilaration. What had I done? Yet, the memory of the kiss sent shivers down my spine. I was living a double life, and the thrill was unlike anything I'd experienced. Each secret meeting with Marcos, each lie to Aaron, added layers to my deception. I juggled my dual lives with a skill I didn't know I possessed, each day blurring into the next in a haze of anticipation and dread. This wasn't me, I wasn't this person. Yet, as I looked in the mirror, the woman who stared back was a stranger, caught in the web of her own making, thrilling in the secrecy and danger of an affair. The realization was sobering, but the pull of this new, exhilarating life was too strong to resist. The instant I saw him, my heart skipped. Not Aaron, my husband of 5 years, but Marcos, a blast from my past, standing in line at the coffee shop with that same crooked smile that could unravel me. "Jenna?" he asked, as if seeing a ghost. "Marcos," I exclaimed, the familiarity of his name on my lips feeling like a secret sin. We exchanged numbers, a seemingly innocent act that marked the beginning of my descent. That evening, as Aaron watched TV, I texted Marcos under the guise of scrolling through social media. "Great running into you today," I typed, my heart racing with a mix of guilt and excitement. His reply came fast, igniting a conversation that lasted until the early hours. It was thrilling, dangerous, and felt entirely too right. Lunch with Marcos was supposed to be a catch-up between old friends. Instead, it sparked something new, or perhaps rekindled what was never fully extinguished. We laughed, shared stories, and lingered over coffee, the connection undeniable. I lied to Aaron that day, saying I was swamped with work. It was the first lie of many. The affair escalated quickly. Marcos kissed me after one of our secret meetups, and I didn't resist. The guilt was overshadowed by a newfound exhilaration. I was leading a double life, torn between my husband and the man who had reignited something in me that I didn't even realize had been extinguished. Aaron's suspicion grew with each late night and unexplained absence. "Where were you really?" he'd press, his voice heavy with doubt. I became a master of deflection, accusing him of being paranoid, even as the evidence mounted against me. Marcos gave me a necklace, a tangible symbol of our affair. I hid it in the back of a sock drawer, a poor attempt at keeping my two worlds separate. Aaron found it one day, his face a mix of confusion and hurt. "It's just from an old friend," I lied, barely recognizing my own voice. The tension in our home became palpable, arguments more frequent and more heated. I bought a second phone to communicate with Marcos, a move that felt like crossing a point of no return. Aaron nearly discovered it one evening, and I managed to hide it just in time, my heart pounding in my chest. The fear of getting caught was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Each step I took away from Aaron and towards Marcos was laced with deception and betrayal. I was losing myself in the thrill of the affair, blinded by desire and the intoxication of being wanted in a way I hadn't felt in years. But with each lie, each secret rendezvous, the foundation of my marriage crumbled a little more, setting me on a path towards an inevitable, devastating collapse. The moment Marcos asked me to leave Aaron, my world stood still. "Think about it, Jenna. We could have something real," he urged, his eyes searching mine for a hint of agreement. I hesitated, every fiber of my being screaming that this was the point of no return. "I'll consider it," I finally whispered, a promise that felt more like a betrayal with each breath I took. As I lay awake that night, Aaron's steady breathing beside me, I allowed myself to fantasize about a life with Marcos. A life filled with passion, excitement, and the unknown. We'd travel, explore new places, and build a life together away from the shadows of deceit. The plan was like a vivid dream, so tempting yet fraught with guilt. The bubble burst when Marcos, driven by impatience or folly, showed up at my workplace unannounced. His presence, meant to be a grand gesture, turned into a spectacle. Word got around fast, and by the evening, Aaron confronted me with a look that chilled me to the bone. "I heard about your visitor today, Jenna, what's going on?" His voice was calm, but the hurt behind it was palpable. Faced with Aaron's ultimatum, my world crumbled. "Come clean or it's over," he stated, leaving no room for excuses. The truth spilled out in a flood of tears and confessions. I told him about Marcos, the affair, and the indecision tearing me apart. I begged for his forgiveness, for a chance to make things right, but the damage was done. Aaron's departure was silent, a quiet storm leaving devastation in its wake. He needed time to think, he said, but the finality in his voice told me everything I needed to know. The absence of his presence in our home was a stark reminder of the cost of my choices. In the aftermath, my decision to be with Marcos felt like stepping into a void. Relief at no longer living a lie was tinged with fear of the unknown. I had chosen a path that promised happiness but was littered with the debris of a broken marriage and a shattered trust. As I moved forward, each step was heavy with the realization of what I had lost and what I hoped to gain. The world I thought I knew shattered in an instant. The twist came out of nowhere, leaving me gasping for air. Marcos, the man I had risked everything for, casually mentioned he was married and had no intention of leaving his wife. "It's complicated, Jenna, you wouldn't understand," he said with a shrug, his words slicing through me like a knife. Betrayal burned through me as I confronted Marcos. "How could you do this to me?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. He looked at me, not with remorse, but with cold indifference. "Life's complicated, Jenna, I thought you knew what this was." His dismissal of my feelings was a wake-up call, a bitter pill that I swallowed with tears streaming down my face. Desperate for a semblance of the life I had so recklessly thrown away, I tried to reach out to Aaron. But he had vanished from my world as if he had never been a part of it. His phone number was changed, and the home we shared now felt like a tomb, echoing with the ghosts of our past. Isolation crept in as friends chose sides, an invisible line drawn in the sand. Most sided with Aaron, their silent judgment a constant reminder of the wreckage I had caused. Loneliness became my only companion, its weight pressing down on me with every breath I took. I threw myself into work, seeking solace in the numbing routine of daily tasks. But solace remained elusive, a distant mirage in the desert of my reality. The encounter with Aaron, seeing him laugh and hold someone else, twisted the knife deeper into my heart. Jealousy and loss consumed me, a toxic cocktail that left me reeling. My performance at work began to suffer as depression wrapped its cold fingers around me. The vibrant, confident woman I once was faded into a shadow, a mere echo of her former self. Regret became my constant companion, whispering reminders of the happiness I had so carelessly destroyed. The realization of the full extent of my actions came crashing down on me like a tidal wave. The understanding that I had not only lost Aaron but had also lost myself in the process was a bitter truth I could no longer ignore. The cost of my choices was etched into the very fabric of my being, a price paid in full with a heart shattered beyond recognition. From the moment I stepped into the fallout of my own making, the consequences of my actions bore down on me with the weight of the world. My career, once a source of pride, became a battlefield. Whispers filled the halls, each murmur a pointed reminder of the scandal I had caused. Social invitations ceased, and colleagues who once greeted me with warm smiles now offered nothing but cold shoulders. The professional world I had built on years of hard work crumbled beneath the stigma of my personal failures. In this new, lonelier existence, I sought solace in the small things. A book read without interruption, a solitary walk in the park, a cup of coffee savored in silence. These moments, insignificant as they might seem, became my lifelines, tiny beacons of light in the overwhelming darkness. I was learning to accept this altered state of being, finding a semblance of peace in the simplicity of solitude. The unexpected news of Marcos's downfall reached me through the grapevine, a twisted sword of poetic justice. His wife had left him, taking their children and the remnants of their life together, leaving him to stew in the aftermath of his own deceit. I couldn't help but wonder if he felt the same gnawing emptiness that had become my constant companion. Reflection became a daily ritual, a time to confront the hurt I had caused and the karma I now faced. The realization that I was not the victim but the architect of my own misery was a bitter pill to swallow. With each passing day, I came to understand the depth of the pain I had inflicted, not just on Aaron, but on everyone caught in the crossfire of my selfishness. In the midst of my introspection, life offered a glimmer of hope in the form of someone new. He was kind, understanding, and, most importantly, unaware of the chaos that had been my life. Yet, the scars of my past held me back, fear anchoring me to the spot, unable to move forward. The thought of risking someone else's heart was a risk too great to take, leaving me trapped in a cycle of loneliness and regret. Therapy became my sanctuary, a place to unravel the tangled web of emotions and actions that had led me to this point. Through sessions filled with tears and revelations, I began to understand the motivations behind my choices and the steps needed to heal. It was a slow, often painful process, but with each breakthrough, I felt a piece of my burden lift, giving way to a cautious optimism. Small improvements in my mental health emerged like the first rays of dawn after a long night. Laughter no longer felt foreign, and hope, a concept I had once abandoned, started to take root. Yet, progress is not a straight line, a lesson I learned the hard way when I ran into Marcos. His attempt to rekindle what we had, a desperate bid to cling to the past, served as a stark reminder of how far I had come, and how easily it could all unravel. Facing Marcos again, I found the strength I didn't know I had. Rejecting his advances, I realized that the journey I was on was mine alone, a path towards redemption and self-forgiveness that no one else could walk for me. The setback, instead of breaking me, fortified my resolve. I was not the woman I had been, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I was finally ready to face it head-on, one small step at a time. The moment I turned Marcos away, something inside me clicked. It was as if I was seeing the world for the first time in color, realizing I didn't need him or his false promises to define my worth. That rejection wasn't just about him, it was a declaration of my independence, a step towards reclaiming the life I had so carelessly set on fire. In the wake of that decision, I turned inward, focusing on personal growth with a fervor I hadn't known I possessed. I was determined to learn from my past mistakes, to emerge from the ashes of my broken marriage a wiser, stronger person. This wasn't about redemption in the eyes of others, but about proving to myself that I could rise above the chaos I had created. New interests became my solace and my salvation. I threw myself into painting, the strokes of my brush a tangible expression of the tumultuous emotions raging within me. Yoga offered me a sense of peace and grounding, each pose a step towards finding balance in the chaos. These weren't just hobbies, they were lifelines, pulling me back from the brink of despair. There were moments of weakness, of course. Late at night, the loneliness would become unbearable, and my thoughts would drift to Aaron. What if I reached out? Could there be a chance for reconciliation? But as dawn broke, clarity would return. That chapter of my life was closed, not out of spite or regret, but out of a newfound respect for the both of us. We deserved to move on, to find happiness apart from the wreckage of our past. Acknowledging my role in the destruction of our marriage was a bitter pill to swallow. It was easier to play the victim, to blame outside forces for the choices I had made. But true growth meant facing the uncomfortable truths, owning up to my mistakes, and learning to live with them. It was a painful process, fraught with moments of self-doubt and regret, but it was necessary. Forgiveness, especially forgiving oneself, is a journey with no roadmap. It wasn't a moment of epiphany, but a gradual acceptance that, despite the hurt I had caused, I was still deserving of love and happiness. This realization didn't erase the past, but it allowed me to view it through a lens of compassion and understanding, both for myself and for those I had hurt. In the midst of this tumultuous journey, I met someone new. Not a romantic interest, but a friend, someone who saw me not for my failures but for the person I was striving to become. This friendship was a tentative step towards rebuilding my social circle, a reminder that connection and belonging were still possible, even after everything that had happened. Each of these actions, from the rejection of Marcos to the forging of new friendships, was a step on the path to recovery. It was a path littered with obstacles and setbacks, but also one that offered glimpses of hope and moments of clarity. As I navigated this terrain, I did so with a newfound resilience, a deep-seated belief that, no matter how far I had fallen, it was always possible to stand up, dust myself off, and begin the journey towards healing and redemption. The world as I knew it had crumbled, but from its ashes, I began to see the glimmers of a new life, a new perspective that was both terrifying and liberating. It was as if I had been looking through a kaleidoscope, the patterns of my existence constantly shifting, never quite settling. But now, the pieces were starting to form a picture I could understand, one where the sharp edges of my past mistakes didn't cut as deeply. With this newfound clarity came a wave of gratitude. It might seem strange, feeling thankful for a journey marked by betrayal and loss, but it had taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. I was grateful for the pain, for it had forced me to grow, to evolve beyond the person I once was. It was a hard-won wisdom, one that came at a great cost but was invaluable nonetheless. Emboldened by this sense of appreciation for my tumultuous journey, I reached out to old friends, hoping to mend bridges I had thought irrevocably burned. The receptions were mixed. Some doors remained closed, the hurt too deep to forgive, while others opened tentatively, the bonds of past friendships cautiously explored once more. It was a humbling experience, a reminder that not all wounds heal with time, but some connections, however frayed, can still be salvaged. In the quiet moments, I found stability, a sense of calm that had eluded me for so long. My life, once defined by the chaos of my choices, had settled into a rhythm that was soothing in its predictability. I cherished this peace, understanding now that the storm had been necessary to appreciate the stillness. Yet, with stability came the full realization of what I had lost. It was a clarity that brought with it a profound sense of sorrow for the life I could have had, for the love I had squandered. Some things, once broken, can't be mended, and the acceptance of that truth was a bitter pill to swallow. It was a loss that was deeply felt, a void that no amount of self-improvement or new perspectives could fill. The final confrontation with Aaron was a moment suspended in time, a culmination of all the steps I had taken on this journey of self-discovery. His words, cold yet not unkind, were a stark reflection of the irreversible damage my actions had caused. "I'm happier without you," he said simply, and in his eyes, I saw the truth of it. It was the closure I had long sought, yet it offered no solace, only the stark realization of my complete downfall. As I watched Aaron walk away, a chapter of my life closed forever, I was left to reflect on the irreversible damage of my choices. There was no redemption to be found, no turning back the clock on the pain caused. My journey had come full circle, leaving me to navigate the remnants of a life forever altered by my actions. It was a sobering acknowledgement of the cost of betrayal, a lesson learned in the hardest way.